is Laura Vargas. I'm the Director of Outreach Programs for Peer Support Community Partners, and this is our Grief in the Wake, Conversations about Loss to Suicide and Substance Use video series, where we talk about topics related to losing a loved one to suicide or substance use and break down some information on the grief experience. Today, we'll be talking about ambiguous grief.
My name is Joanna. I'm the Director of Safety, Hope, and Healing, Counseling and Consulting. And ambiguous grief is one of those big categories that can mean lots of different things to many different people. Today, we're going to be talking about two specific aspects of ambiguous grief that are sometimes referred to as the goodbye without leaving, which is kind of the divorce, the relocation, the dementia. It's when the person is still physically there, but they're not present as themselves in the same way. And the other type is the leaving without goodbye, where often people don't know if the person is alive or dead. They're gone and they're missing in some way. And so often there's just so much doubt and question around what is happening. And this type of ambiguous loss can have a huge impact for people.
When it comes to cases of suicide or substance use, ambiguous grief can come up in many ways. So when we talk about goodbye without leaving, this might be situations where individuals don't know where their loved one is, where they might not know how their loved one is doing while this person is alive. They wonder if this person is safe. They wonder when they'll hear from this person again, and they grieve having that person in their lives in the way that they were used to. So when we think about the grief experience following a physical death, loss of someone due to suicide and substance use, we have to understand just how complex and layered it is when people might have been experiencing this prior to the death. When it comes to leaving without goodbye, that can come up in many ways also when we think about suicide and substance use. It can come up in ways where the person might change. Their loved ones might not recognize them. Their personality might be different than the person that they once knew, and yet they grieve for that person that they knew. They grieve for the person prior to any mental health struggles or prior to substance use. So again, many layers when it comes to that grief experience, to that physical death loss. A lot has already come up for many people, not everyone, but it's important to keep ambiguous grief in mind and to think about what we can do to work through that.
And some of the things that people say that they've found helpful around mourning ambiguous losses are things like just being able to name it, right? Being able to identify that this is grief, right? Identify that this is a form of loss and that it is hard, that it is something that people are experiencing and that it's valid. And then we talk about this idea of identifying multiple emotions. So many things can come up around this, just like with other types of grief, really thinking about the yearning, the sadness, the anger, in some cases, the relief, right? In some cases, the blame and frustration, and just acknowledging that breadth of emotions is so important for people. And then not comparing. We know that this can do so much harm when sometimes people say, well, at least my person is still alive, so I shouldn't be grieving, or at least there's still a chance, right, that they could come back. And so this isn't valid. I shouldn't grieve yet. But knowing that all losses are worth grieving, right? And allowing yourself to feel what you need to feel is so important. We know that sometimes it can be helpful to really consider some sort of ceremony, some sort of ritual, and those can look vastly different depending on the family, depending on the culture, depending on the type of loss. But allowing there to be some sort of ritual is often very helpful for many people. And then finally, seeking out some support if it feels like some support would be helpful. And that can look like so many different things. There's certainly peer support, there's counseling support, there's there's video series. There's just a range of supports that are available, and knowing that everyone needs some support at some point in their lives, and seeking support when it is going to be helpful is really a sign of strength.
Thank you so much for sharing those tips, Joanna. So as she mentioned, there's lots of different support options, and it really depends on each person. We know that grief is incredibly common, but it's also very unique to each individual. And so seeking out what works for you at Peer Support Community Partners, at Safety, Hope, and Healing, we have tons of resources. Peer support community partners focuses on peer grief support. Safety open healing on professional grief support. People can combine multiple forms of support to find the right grief plan for them. But if you have any questions or need any support whatsoever, you can reach out to us at any point. Likewise, if you have topics you want to hear a little bit more about in this video series, please let us know. But thank you so much for watching.